Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a fascinating piece of source material called Sacred Rewire, the neuroscience of peace. This is where modern neuroscience literally meets ancient scripture, and it gives us this incredible, daily, actionable protocol to actually physically rewire our brains away from anxiety and straight toward peace. We aren't just talking about, thinking happy thoughts here. We're talking about structural renewal inside your nervous system. Let's get right into it and see how this actually works.
So, do you ever wake up feeling like your brain is running a marathon you definitely didn't sign up for? Picture this. You wake up, your body is still just resting in bed, but your mind, it's instantly generated this massive thought cloud packed with scribbled worries, pressure, everything you didn't check off yesterday's to-do list. You literally haven't even put your feet on the floor yet, and you already feel behind. It's such a common experience, but here's the kicker from our source material. You aren't actually behind. Your brain is just in this highly receptive state waiting for direction, and right now, it's just defaulting to panic.
Most of us think the problem is just our chaotic routines or difficult circumstances. But the source suggests something way deeper. It says there's a silent architect inside your head. And this architect never sleeps. It's been busy building these massive structures of anxiety while you weren't even looking. So the real issue isn't necessarily what's happening to you. It's that your brain has been trained over time to just return to a default setting of fear. Transformation, then, isn't about magically eliminating all your problems. It's about completely rewiring how your mind actually processes them.
Okay, so the science behind this silent architect is rooted in a fundamental principle called Hebb's law. It simply states that neurons that fire together wire together, meaning your brain doesn't just naturally rise to your best intentions, right? It falls back on its conditioning. If you spent years rehearsing feelings of inadequacy or worry, you haven't just had a few bad days. You've essentially funded a high-speed 8-lane interstate for self-doubt right there in your nervous system. Talk about an unwanted infrastructure project. Because of this highway, the anxiety feels totally automatic. That's just neuroplasticity in action.
And that brings us to another crucial piece of the puzzle, the default mode network. Think of this as your brain's background narrator. When you aren't intentionally choosing what to focus on, this network just hops right into the driver's seat. And without you giving it deliberate direction, it automatically defaults to things like rumination, regret, and comparison. It completely traps us in these exhausting loops of overthinking. But as the source points out, your brain isn't broken. It's just wired perfectly to do exactly what you've repeatedly fed it.
So, you might be wondering, why does our default mode network skew so negative in the first place? Well, it all comes down to the brain's negativity bias. See, biologically, evolution designed us to constantly scan for danger, literally just to keep us alive. Because of that survival mechanism, our brains act like Velcro for negative experiences. They stick instantly and they hold on tight. But for good experiences, our brains are like Teflon. The positive moments just slide right off without leaving a single mark. This bias makes it incredibly easy to build anxious pathways and really tough to build peaceful ones, unless we step in and intervene.
Which leads to this absolutely powerful metaphor from our source text. Think of every single thought you have as water or fertilizer in a garden. Because of neuroplasticity, or as the ancient text puts it, as a man thinks, so is he. Every single thought is actively nourishing specific neural pathways. If you're constantly watering the weeds of worry, well, they're going to take over the whole garden. It is absolutely crucial that we become highly selective about what we choose to fertilize.
Section 1. The 15-second morning shift. Taking control of the brain's transition state.
So when you first wake up, your brain is in this incredibly receptive transition state. Whatever you engage with first literally sets the emotional trajectory for your entire day. So instead of doing what we all do, immediately grabbing the phone and absorbing all the chaos of the world, the source recommends visualizing a giant pause button. Just hit that pause button for exactly 15 seconds. This clears out those mental scribbles we talked about and lets you introduce a peace anchor. You're consciously deciding the direction of your day before that default mode network can hijack it.
And here's a perfect example of a peace anchor right from the text. Recite this truth. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. But wait, don't just say it out loud. The author really emphasizes that you have to physically reckon with this truth. Like actively think about the staggering, mind-blowing complexity of your DNA. Focus on the steady, reliable rhythm of your beating heart. By dedicating your first 15 seconds to this, you're actually giving your brain strict instructions to look for evidence of goodness and order throughout the day, instead of just defaulting to chaos.
Section 2. The 3-second neural audit. Catching toxic thoughts before they take root.
Okay, so neuroscience reveals there is this invisible 3-second window where you can actually intercept a toxic thought before it takes root in your brain. Here is the rapid, actionable sequence the source gives us to do exactly that. Step 1 is awareness. You got to catch yourself spiraling into one of those what-if scenarios. Step 2, rapidly relabel it out loud by saying that is not true and that is not noble. And then step 3 is cognitive reframing, immediately replacing that thought. Doing this interrupts that little neural spark right before it can erupt into a full-blown emotional fire.
So how exactly do we replace it? Well, the text introduces what it calls the Philippians 4:8 filter. During your daytime audit, when you desperately need to replace a toxic thought, you run it right through this specific scriptural filter. You literally force your brain to pivot and focus on something that is true, pure, or lovely. You aren't just slapping a smiley face on it and ignoring the negative, you're actively engaging in cognitive reframing. You're starving those anxiety pathways of their fertilizer, and you're watering the pathways of peace instead.
Section 3, Nighttime Neural Consolidation. Synaptic pruning during sleep. Now, your mind definitely doesn't just shut off when you fall asleep, right? It actually keeps processing the script that you handed it in your final waking moments. While you sleep, your brain goes through a process called synaptic pruning. It basically decides which neural pathways to keep and which ones to toss out, all based on that final script. So if you fall asleep scrolling on your phone, you're essentially telling your brain to keep the stress. Instead, the source gives us this pre-sleep protocol. Put away the screens, take just 3 minutes to name 3 specific moments of grace from your day, and speak calmly because that directly regulates your vagus nerve, signaling to your body that you are completely safe. To really help with that vagus nerve regulation, the text recommends actually speaking this specific verse out loud. I will lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Notice the emphasis here on slow, calm speech. This isn't just a nice, comforting nighttime ritual, it's a literal biological intervention. It signals your nervous system that, hey, the lion is not here. It downregulates your fight-or-flight response, which allows your brain to effectively consolidate those peaceful neural pathways while you get some rest.
Section 4. The 30-Day Sacred Rewire. Building New Highways of the Mind.
The overarching goal of all of this is to completely shift from inadequacy as your identity to truth as your automatic reflex. And the timeline for this protocol? 30 days. Our source makes a really profound point here. Your brain respects a consistent, calm rhythm way more than it respects intense emotional hype. You really don't need a massive emotional explosion to change your life. What you need is steady repetition. By committing to this daily rhythm for 30 days, those tiny, narrow, hard-to-find footpaths of joy will gradually expand into robust, totally automatic new neurological highways.
And to really lock this in, the source recommends something called motor activation. We've got the mental steps down, sure, but taking a physical action actually deepens the neurological encoding of your intention. You're committing to the 30-day rhythm mentally, but you solidify it by physically doing something. The author suggests a simple motor activation, like physically typing the phrase Sacred Rewire into the comments. It bridges that gap between just having a passive thought and making an active physical commitment. It literally tells your brain, okay, we are actually doing this.
So I want to leave you with this really provocative question. What pathways will your brain build while you sleep tonight? That silent architect we talked about? It is always working. The neuroplasticity is always happening. The only question is, who's holding the blueprints? You now have the exact protocol, the morning shift, the daytime audit, the evening consolidation to take back control of your mind's architecture. Start right now. Hit that pause button, reframe the script, and choose exactly what you want to fertilize. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this empowers you to start your own Sacred Rewire today.